In the nick of time, Guillermo arrives
I was
All
just going
right.
to say the same thing.
to be.
Yes, that was just in the nick of time because we are live on a Tuesday night for Talk Time with TJ Triple T number 214, February 3rd already. February 3rd, 2026. My name is TJ Zebel. I will be your host tonight. I call myself a professional problem solver, which I always follow up with, no, I don't know everything. I just have a unique way of asking questions to help people find the solutions that they are looking for. Got all sorts of fun stuff going on. We're live on YouTube as well, which means I get to say, hi, Mom, up in Minnesota there, And I'm down in Dallas, Texas, y'all. So glad you guys could join in. For those of you that are joining on YouTube, I'd appreciate it if you would do me a big favor that doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. Please click the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know we're back on the air, and click some likes, watch some more videos, leave some comments. I would appreciate that. Also got a website I'd love to have you check out at www.thetSWB.com. TheTallSkinnyWhiteBoy.com is what it stands for. Has since way before the internet, so whatever you find TSWB out there, it is not me unless you see this gorgeous face. And, wow. Been talking all day, so we'll see how I do tonight. But on the website, you'll find a bunch of stuff that I get to do. I get to help people with depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, grief, work with athletes from beginner up to pro level. I offer corporate coaching because I found out that all those people in the corporate world are still humans. Go figure. Actually, I really enjoy working with them. It's a good time. But I also offer a free 30-minute consultation. That's right, no charge to you. Your opportunity to have 30 minutes chatting with me, seeing what we can work out. At the end of that, if I feel I'm a good fit, I will let you know. But also, if at the end of it I feel like I'm probably not the best choice for the change work you're looking for, I will be honest, let you know, and I will do my best to help you find somebody that has the exact skills that we are looking for to get you the solutions that you are looking for. Yes. Again, did I say I've been talking all day? But now it's time to introduce the tie of the week. Been wearing a different tie not every, we finally had to start over a couple weeks into 25, but this one is kind of indiscreet. There we go. We recognize a few of those fine characters on there. Got a little poo on my tie again, and I don't mind. And now we got that done. Moving on to who's got something good to share from the last 7 days since we were here last? Anybody got some cool stuff? Lenora.
So I don't usually do this on my phone, and I can see the pickle as to how this is trickier. Hi, everyone. What I would love to share with you all is that we are finally putting together a book list. A book list of the books that have inspired us, the books that spoke to us, the books that really helped us. And if you have a book, if you could send me the link or just send me the name and the author so that we could put together a list for everyone who logs into Triple T, who visits TJ's website, anything like that. And that way we all have them corralled in one place, which would be oh so helpful for people. And we could also post it on YouTube. So that's what I wanted to share about that.
Very cool. I appreciate your help on that too. Been wanting to get that done for quite a while. That's why it's good to have a tribe. I try to stay on top of my projects, but my projects have projects. I've probably got as many projects as I have squirrels. And if you know Planet TJ, you know that my squirrels have squirrels who know squirrels who invite squirrels to the party. Anybody else got anything cool they want to share from the last 7 days? And silence. Sometimes no news is good news, though. So hopefully everybody had a nice, even keel, cool week. Mark.
I was going to say general knowledge. The prognosticator. I think everybody in America knows, Punxsutawney Phil, and he saw his shadow. So I guess we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter.
Oh.
It's full of crap. I don't care.
I think he needs to take another
checkup from the neck up.
Take another look. Maybe it just wasn't the right time.
I'll tell you one thing. You Southerners, it may make a difference, but I hear in North Dakota ain't no difference. It will be another 6 months, 6 years. God damn it, it's going to be a long time before we see any green around here.
Yeah, I heard you guys have been in the deep freeze for long enough. Even up in Minnesota, they've been getting quite the cold snap,
Yeah,
we've got above freezing here today, so got all the way to 34.
And we went from 30s to 40s to yesterday it was 72 in Burleson. And when you're used to when you finally got used to winter weather and then all of a sudden 72 shows up just like that, like, you're warming. And Holly joined us. Awesome. One last call. Any cool stuff from the week before we move on with the show? Speaking of the show, for those of you joining for the very first time, the way it works, the first hour, I do the best I can to get through 3 topics I've picked for the week. And then second hour, we do a little change up, and it's open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call can bring up a question or a topic, and I let the people on the call answer first, because I still like to learn as well. And if after everybody has answered, that's when, if I still have something to add, I'll put in my 2 centavos. So without further ado, if we got nothing else to add from the week, it's time to announce the topics of the week. Topics of the week for number 214 is indifference, boredom, and 26.2. And if you've been around Planet TJ for a while or Triple T for a while, you know that a lot of my stuff comes from my client work. And indifference came from client work. A lot of people think that indifference and not caring are the exact same. And in a way they kind of are, but there are subtle differences. I looked them up on the internet. I wanted to bring this up. And the definition they put on here, the terms indifferent and not caring both describe a lack of interest or concern, but they have subtle differences. Indifferent. This term applies a neutral or apathetic attitude towards a situation or person, often without any personal bias or preference, whereas not caring emphasizes a complete lack of concern or empathy, suggesting that the person does not take any interest in the feelings or needs of others. In summary, while both terms indicate a lack of interest, indifferent suggests a more neutral stance, whereas not caring conveys a complete absence of concern. The reason that we brought this up is when you start understanding the difference between protective empathy and toxic empathy, indifference settles in quite nicely with protective empathy. You can understand what a person is going through, you can feel for them, but you don't have to allow it to affect you. Also, when looking at future outcomes, a lot of people like to get caught up, wound in, worried about worst case scenario. And we've talked about this before. What is one commonality with overthinkers? They don't overthink best case scenario. They're always overthinking worst case scenario. Whereas if you could, even if you can't really dive into everything's going to be awesome, everything's going to be good, best case scenario, rah, 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 you can at least start adopting an attitude of indifference, knowing that you're going to be fine regardless of what happens. If it's really looking like it's weighted towards the potential for worst case scenario, you can plan for it, but you don't have to sit there and continuously work yourself into a frenzy about what might go wrong. I saw a great metaphor, great live metaphor of overthinking in worst case scenario, where somebody took a standard wine glass, didn't use a tiny little glass, and went to the top of stairs, and I'm pretty sure it was marbles, but had this tote of marbles, a good sized tote, a lot of marbles or something like that, and tipped it. And these marbles are bouncing down the stairs, down the steps towards this wine glass. A few of them bounced off of the wine glass, none of them made it in. And the metaphor basically said, here's an example of all the worst case scenario things that I've worried about and how many of them actually happened. And indifference to me would be, okay, tip them. I'm okay with what happens because I know that I will survive. When you're out and about with groups of people and you get those voices in your head, you start mind reading. Oh, I just saw that look. They looked at me and they're probably thinking that I blah, blah, blah. And that other person, when I said that certain thing, everybody laughed, but they didn't. So they must have thought blah, blah, blah. And you could tell yourself that you're going to take on an attitude of, you know what, I don't care. I don't care what they think. I really, whatever. They can think what they want to think. Versus, I don't know what they're thinking. And so I'm just going to be indifferent about it. I'm going to hold indifference towards the situation. I'm not a mind reader. And I don't feel the need to know exactly what they're thinking anyway. So I can be indifferent about it. Anybody got any input, ahas, epiphanies so far on this? And by the way, for those of you that are out on YouTube watching this, no, I'm not talking to myself when people shut off their cameras. You guys don't get to see them, but we've got people on here. Lenora.
I promise I am coming on camera. I love the idea of indifference because I feel like that gives it an idea of neutrality. There are 1 bajillion things that somebody could be thinking about, and we are definitely able to wrap ourselves up in the idea of, oh, they must be thinking this about me, or they must be thinking that, rather than either, oh, maybe they didn't hear it. Oh, maybe they're thinking about something at home. Oh, maybe they're just totally not present, or maybe they're forming an opinion or something like that. And it's so hilarious because that person can possibly be thinking about you. And then at the same time, you could also play the other hand and think, gee, that's awfully self-absorbed of you and self-centered, that they could be thinking about anything and everything. And they're thinking very specifically about you and judging you. And I love the metaphor about the wine glass and the,
Marbles?
yes, thank you.
Yeah. Watching that example really helped put it into perspective. I wish I could play it for you guys on here. You would, it's even more impactful. Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, that's at the heart of, paranoia. I can remember I had a client years ago, and he was like, "Oh, those people, they're thinking bad thoughts about me. And they were just looking at him, and I said, "Are they looking at you, or are they looking through you? Because I can look at somebody dead in the eye, and this is how I explain it. I can, I can be looking at my garage door, but I'm staring in your direction.
Mm-hmm.
When you think people are, looking at you, yeah, they're really not thinking about you, and I say, and I tell people, you're just not that important, and neither am I, and neither, that when people look in your direction, how do you know they're looking at you or they're thinking about something like Laura said? Their mind could be 1,000,000 miles away, and they just happen to be looking in your direction, And I say, dude, those people in the store weren't looking at you. They probably were looking through you because you're just not that important, to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not important, again, you're important, you're important to people in your life, but strangers are, they're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about what they're going to have for supper. They're thinking about, what's on their, what do they have to pick up at the store? And they're just looking in your direction, and you're taking, you're taking that glance as having some meaning, and it really doesn't, we look through people all the time. We look at people when we don't see them.
Yes. And I've turned it around on people who have done that. I'm like, really? So how long have you known that person? Well, I don't even know them. Well, what were you thinking about them before you noticed that they were looking at you? What? Well, what were you thinking about them before you noticed they were looking at you? And that person over there standing right behind him, what were you thinking about that person? I wasn't I don't even know them. I said, well, if you're not even giving them the time of thinking about them, what makes you think that they're thinking about you? And you just proved you don't know them. If you don't know them, why do you care? And this is where the indifference versus not caring subtlety can settle in. I can say that I don't care what that person is thinking, or I can just be completely indifferent to it because I don't know who they are anyway. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they might be thinking. And so I can be completely indifferent to what they possibly are thinking. Holly.
You know, it's interesting when you use the word empathy, like a healthy empathy, and you don't lose that. I was just thinking, when's the last time, I've never thought this before, but, if you think somebody's thinking something bad about you, there's definitely the, oh, they probably aren't. But I think it's interesting to say, and what if they are? What must be going wrong in their life that they've come to that conclusion?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I have empathy for that? Which is a very different take, I think. Gets you outside of yourself, looking at them and recognizing their opinion isn't even necessarily right. It's maybe more a result of trauma or something going wrong in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know where they are in their day, in their life, what's going on. And again, it's a mind read. And it to me is quite it takes a lot of energy to do that. And what do you get in return? A lot of burned energy. Mark.
Yeah, someone smart than me once said, indifference is the difference that makes the difference in a lot of situations.
Ooh.
Because I think indifference can be a very powerful state to be in, whereas
Mm-hmm.
not caring is can be a very vulnerable state.
Mm-hmm.
So when when you're indifferent to outcome, I think that's a very powerful place to be.
Exactly. Or what's being made for supper tonight? I trust the person that's making the food for me, so I'm indifferent to what it is. Versus, I don't care what they make, I'm either going to like it or I'm not. Lenora.
Thinking the squirrel that had the idea. Oh, for as many times as you think that they're thinking about you, how many times do you think that they're thinking this about me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's quite true. Especially when you start coaching people, you really notice, or teaching or sharing, being therapy source to people, you really start to notice, oh, wow, we're all very human.
And that's where a number of my clients, once they start, when they've been working on themselves enough, they reach that level where they're able to be indifferent about all of those things. They can go into a place, and even if it's a place that they've been in many times before, and they've got stories and histories on the people that are in there, and oh, this person said this about, oh, this person is this type of person, and this person does this, and blah blah blah. Instead of investing all that time worrying about the other people, being able to be indifferent and realize that they're just other people. They're just doing their thing. They're trying to get by. They're trying to make their life work just like everybody else, you know. And being indifferent about what's going on in their life as long as it's not negatively impacting yours. We're all just trying to get through the day on a happy tone and get set up for a happy tomorrow. And that what you said there, Mark, is great. Indifference is the difference that makes the difference. That is, I'm going to say, right in the brilliance of, oh, that's another good one right there. We're working with the same handicap. We're human. Humans in their natural environment. And so all we can do is the best that we can do. But the greatest part about that is we can always get better. Even if things aren't working out the way that we had expected them to, we didn't fail as long as we were able to to gain the lesson out of what happened. And I think those lessons land a lot softer when we have indifference towards the outcome. You look at some people, Squirrel just delivered this, the difference in people taking tests. The ones that get absolutely worked up to the point of affecting their health, their sleep, all the above, and the ones that are indifferent going, I've paid attention, I've went over my notes, I'm as prepared as I'm going to be, and I'm going to get some sleep tonight because I'm indifferent about what's going to happen. If all I can do is the best that I can do. And I know that I am not going to go in there and completely bomb it. That will not happen. So as long as I get a grade that I can advance towards the next level, I'm good. Because the A students end up working for the C students anyway. And I think a lot of the C students went in more relaxed with a level of indifference to the outcome. And that's just my hallucination, but I've seen enough of it. Mark.
Yeah, test anxiety, like I said, all it can do is interfere with performance. You know, we got enough studies have proven that. In high school, I had a teacher, Brother Greenwald, and he passed out little pieces of paper, and he said, "I don't believe in marks." He goes, "Put down the grade you think you deserve, and if I agree with you, I'll give you that mark at the end of the semester." So, I sat there and hemmed and hawed. I'd done okay. It was chemistry, and so I put down a B on a piece of paper. And I passed it to my friend before it went to the end and got collected. He looked at me, he looked at the piece of paper, he looked at me, he looked at the piece of paper. He put a plus beside the B, passed it in, I got a B plus. But our test performance was, much better because we didn't have any anxiety. We knew what we were going to get. So,
So would you say that he allowed you to create a bit of indifference towards the outcome because you were going to be doing the best you could, and if you ended up with the B, that was where you were fine with that?
yeah, yeah. Again, he took away all test anxiety, you know,
Yeah.
right out of the gig. And again, sometimes teachers, good teachers will do that, and they'll start the semester and they'll say, okay, everybody in here, you got an A. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, you're all going to get A's in this course. The only thing you can do is not, because every test that we quiz, whatever, all you can do is come down from that. Right now, you all have A's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so people will rise to the level of expectation. Oh, I got an A. Okay, well, yeah, I got a quiz next week. I got to study. I got to keep that A, rather than, again, just another teaching technique
Yep.
to take away that, it made you indifferent to the outcome, but it also empowered you to, you got to maintain that A. I got an A right now. I can't let it slip. So I don't think it was, again, it's just another good teaching technique,
And I think what you just pointed out is another example of, are you playing to win or are you playing not to lose?
Mm. No.
And it sounds like a simple play on words, but a lot of people, when they finally understand, both can be used to your benefit as long as you understand how you're playing. Holly.
This is definitely the topic I needed today, just as a side note. But I'm noticing two kind of common themes that seem to be the difference between not caring and being indifferent. One of them it's come up multiple times, is trust. And so kind of the thought that's coming through my mind is, what do you trust? Do you trust your training? Do you trust, the designer of whatever is going to happen to you, that sort of thing. And then the other one is knowing what actually matters. Because as you pointed out, oh, I feel like I need an A. No, I just need to pass the class. 20 years from now, I'm not even going to remember if I passed the test. How much does it really matter? And it reminds me of, so my dad was a physics teacher for a couple of years. And he had a test at the beginning of the year that he just wanted to see where the students were starting out. And the rule was, if you attempt to answer the question at all, and it was multiple choice, you pass. Guaranteed. And it was just, but I'll give you a number. So, this is also going to be the final test. So if you take this and study it, you could be prepared for the end of the year. But you get 100% as long as you answer the question, and then I'll give you an idea of what was the right answer. And the number of people who didn't answer more than half the questions blew my mind, because I was helping him grade the test. And I think there was this feeling of, I can't look stupid, and that matters more than, getting some kind of feedback. So, what actually matters, what's actually important, I think is a huge factor as well. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes not so much.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it's interesting you brought that up, because in college, I was one of the first students to push for being able to test out of classes, which the teachers dubbed me as arrogant. And I'm like, if I can pass the test, why am I forced to sit in here to listen to you explain to me what's going to be on the test that I just passed? Because I'd had a fair amount of exposure to that stuff anyway. And so I managed to test out of quite a few classes. real quick, Mark, I'll get to you. Mike put a great question in here. Do you think self-regulation plays into this comfort in the quiet with that mentality? I see a lot of unresolved issues as a huge hindrance in the energy to bring to the prep work. I believe that that's part of it, Mike. And I think the more I think it's going to be situational for one, depending on what the issues are and what level of prep work is required. But if you can get yourself to a level of trust that regardless of which outcome shows up, you're going to make it, I think that will allow some indifference to settle in and give you a little more calmness going into the task. Mark.
Yeah. Again, I don't know, again, I think that if in any class, again, if you make the learning fun, I think that, the test can be a test for all the things that, or you could look at it at, oh, wow, there's all these cool things that I haven't learned yet. If I get a low mark on the test, but, I had a physics professor, and on the final in college, he had an extra credit question. It was like, describe the universe, give 2 examples. He was a good teacher. Like I said, trust, comfort, laughter. Like I said, these are the things that, because you can be not, it's the opposite of not caring, is caring too much, putting too much emphasis on a mark. Did you learn sufficient, and again, if you had a teacher that was fun to be in, you learn more, and your retention was greater. Everybody wanted to be in the class. Everybody had a great time, and studies have shown that that their scores in that subject went up because everybody wanted to be there. Everybody wanted. The guy was a cut up. He was and the best teachers know that laughter paired with learning increases conscious retention. And but like I said, trust is about comfort. If you can be comfortable with somebody over time, you begin to trust them. Well, I don't know a faster way on this planet to create comfort between individuals or groups than laughter. So, but it's sometimes caring too much. At least indifference is about, again, what's the outcome, and can I achieve a certain degree of competency? I've clept out of 2 semesters of a language. I took the CLEP exam in college and, thought I did pretty well on the written part. And I brought my test up, and the instructor said, okay, go next door. I said, why? You're going to grade the test right now? Tell me if I passed? He said, no, the audio portion's next door in the audio lab. And I was like, what audio portion? And I did, but I went in there, I listened, I picked up enough, and I was able to clip out it. I had no prep. I was indifferent at that point. Like, I'm gonna bomb this because I don't, language, listening to language to me is not in my wheelhouse, so I was totally indifferent. And then I ended up flipping out of 2 semesters of a language.
And there is that side of the indifference as well. Holly.
And this idea of what matters, another thought that just popped into my head. I don't know how many of you read Carol Dweck's book Mindset, but she talks about with tests, and I can't remember if it was a series or just one, but they gave kids an option to take one of two tests. You could either take a test that was really, really easy for you, that you had basically a guaranteed chance of passing, or you could take a test that would stretch you, and there was a decent chance you were going to get a lower grade on it. And they said, they tracked the kids after seeing what tests they took. And the kids that chose to take the stretching test did way better in life later on, and they got to be way smarter because what mattered to them was stretching themselves and learning something new rather than looking good and making sure they passed, got really high scores. Because it gave them something to study, something to work on, because they were allowed to take them home and all that. So once again, another one of those, how many areas of your life are you worried about looking good and passing, where maybe what you could be looking at is the opportunity to learn something new and stretch and have a growth mindset instead of that limited mindset?
Well, I believe that answer right there, Holly, is the perfect segue into the second topic of the night, which is boredom, which had nothing in common with the answer you gave. The answer was not boring. It ties right into something that my wife found, that a study that they've been doing now for quite a while found that students had great creativity and less stress and a lot more boredom before the 90s. And the study showed that a lot of the kids today, actually a lot of kids since the mid-90s, were suffering from, ironically, a lack of boredom, because in the times of boredom, it forced us to become creative, to think differently, to entertain ourselves without electronics, without video games, without cable TV, without cell phones. And that also tied into a study that pointed out that we're losing our sense of wonder, because back in the day, well, I wonder who the 18th president was. How quickly can we have that answer now? Well, I wonder. Greg and I were talking earlier today. He's looking at putting a set of tires on one of his vehicles. And being I'm a tire guy, been trained for tire applications and stuff. I looked at the tread design and stuff that he was looking for, and well, I wonder what the size difference might be. Now, I know how to calculate that, but the only thing we had to wonder was, how do I find it on the internet? End of wondering. Found the tire size calculator, and all the information was right there. And I've asked a number of my clients, when was the last time you took 5-10 minutes on a nice day to lay on the ground and stare at the clouds and see how many things you see in the clouds? And I've literally had people like, what do you mean? I'm like, you haven't looked at the clouds and seen what's up there? You mean like airplanes? Like, no, the clouds. When all of a sudden you see the teddy bear, and then it's floating along, and all of a sudden it turns into the dragon head. and then it keeps going, and all of a sudden now it's a horse. And you're explaining to people that are laying right next to you, and you're like, see up there? The eye is up there, and oh yeah. Well, I was looking at it and I saw a bear. You're like, a bear? Yeah. There's the legs, and what you called was the eye is the da-da-da. And I think that's why certain generations are so good at those double pictures. Which did you see first, the young lady or the old lady? Well, I saw the young lady for about 10 seconds, and because you said which one, right away I saw the other one. Whereas the people that are kind of challenged in creativity, they're either trying to see one or the other because they can't see either one of them, or once they've focused on, say, the young lady, trying to point out the old lady or the other one, you almost have to say, look away. Now, when you look here, here's the jawline. Oh. And so that was part of the gist of this experiment that they tracked for the amount of people that the kids that ironically did really good in school, got great grades, but were shown to always have things going on. They didn't get that opportunity to be bored. Did not do quite as well later on in life as the kids who were given the opportunity to be bored every now and then. Any input, ahas, epiphanies on that? Lenora.
I definitely remember being bored and saying that I was bored growing up. And then somewhere after middle school, I was just no longer bored. And I will say that if I had said I was bored, I was almost in trouble. And like, we'll find you something to do. You better not tell us you're bored.
Yep.
So there's a good chance that I'm bored and I just don't actually acknowledge it. And I find something to do to busy myself because I can't, it's not acceptable to sit there and be bored. So put that one out there.
I think you caught part of why the study worked.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When we realized we were bored, we found a way to fill it.
Yeah.
Whether it was through creativity, whether it was coming up with a game, whether it was staring at the clouds and seeing what we could see, or building a fort, or something like that, we learned how to recognize boredom and go outside of ourselves to find the answer for it. Mark.
I'm going to leave it to Holly because she, again, she can recall these things, but there's this thing called the flow, and the flow is like an oval, okay? And there are two intersecting lines that, if you can imagine, an oval with two inches, and then, when you have a new challenge, you get into the flow, and you have high anxiety because you don't know a lot when you're trying to learn something new, a new subject, and low knowledge. And when those two lines start to intersect, as your knowledge increases, your anxiety turns to excitement and exhilaration. And then you get to a certain point where those two meet and the challenge is met. And that's, and that's when you're in the flow. You always want to try to be in the flow. And then when you get outside of that circle, okay, that's when the mind feels boredom. And like I said, I don't remember where I read this, but boredom is your mind's way of telling you that you have to go back to the beginning and find a new challenge. So you always want to be in the flow with, learning new things and, because that's when like I said, in the beginning, there's, anxiety and trepidation because you don't have a lot of knowledge, so that's what you're feeling. But as those two lines intersect, you get excitement, exhilaration as you're mastering whatever it is you're trying to master. And then when you get outside the flow, well, that's where boredom lives. And that's a sign, that's what your mind telling you, you got to go back and find a new challenge. And so the goal is always to stay in the flow. And maybe Holly can remember where I learned that, but it was, like I said, it was, because she's better at remembering, books and that stuff. So,
and there she is.
Authors.
Okay, Holly.
Did you want me to jump right in? Okay. It's interesting Mark went there because that was actually the first place I went. I don't know where it came from. I know I first read about it in Rise of Superman by, oh gosh, I can remember the first name's Jamie. My mind's blanking on the last name. And then there's a co-author as well. But if you look up Rise of Superman, I know it's in there. And that is exactly, so, the line is your skill level and the difficulty of the task. And when you're equal to that, right in the middle, you're in what's called the zone of proximal development. And that's where you are learning new things, you're focused, and you could sometimes want to go a little bit above that. It's still in the zone of proximal development because that's where you stretch yourself. And sometimes you want to be a little bit underneath that because that's where you get to feel mastery. That's where you get to show off your skills. But if you go way too high above that, you get into overwhelm, which shuts you down and you're not learning anymore. You're just stressing yourself out, especially if you live there. It's one thing to do tap in there. It's another thing to live there. But also when you aren't challenging yourself, then you live in the zone of boredom, which is beneath the zone of proximal development. And one of the things that makes it really interesting is some people, when they're in boredom, their first instinct is to not take responsibility. So if you're in boredom and you say, I'm going to take responsibility for my boredom, I'm going to take responsibility for my problems, I'm going to take responsibility for everything, that helps you find a way to move up to the zone of proximal development again. But if you outsource it, then you could sit in boredom forever and never get out of it because you're relying on somebody external to you to get you out of boredom. And, boredom is also the place where you don't accomplish much. And so you don't feel very good about yourself. And so, once again, it's not about stepping into boredom. It's not about stepping into overwhelm. It's about living there. So you always want to make sure you're not choosing to live in boredom and you're not choosing to live in overwhelm. And there is somewhere above overwhelm as well. That's where you hit adrenaline. And so you could be very, very productive in adrenaline, but you pay a price when you're living up there. You do not pay a price when you're living in the zone of proximal development and you get into a flow state. And one of the cool things about a flow state, they've tested it, you could be up to 500% more productive when you get into a flow state.
Yep.
So if you think about it, if you could get into a flow state for one day, if you have a 5-day work week, you could get your entire week's worth of work done in just one day. If you sit in a flow state. And I mean, there's whole books about how you stay in the flow state, how you don't accidentally get into boredom. So another thing about boredom that I've just been thinking about, because this new generation, I swear, they all think, this taking responsibility thing. The number of times, what is a flow state? So I call it being in Chen as well. For those of you who have studied Chen, Jing, Qi, all that. The flow state is when you're just focused, really, you're at that ideal level of focus. So you're not overwhelmed, but you're still interested. It's when all of your resources come online. So the worst way to get out of a flow state is interruptions. So if you're constantly responding to texts, if you're constantly responding to emails, this is why they say if you're at work, they recommend you have, deep work or whatever you want to call it. You say for 2 hours, I'm going to turn my phone off. I'm going to turn my emails off. Knock on this door if the house is on fire, if the building's on fire. But other than that, leave me to my devices because I want to get into this flow state. You could feel when you're in a flow state. If you've ever experienced that feeling, it's, defining it is kind of hard to say, but have you ever had that moment when you were just really, really engaged with what you were doing and things were just coming? A common one that a lot of people could feel a flow state is when you're playing a musical instrument.
Yep.
Or if you're an athlete and you've gotten really into whatever game that you're going. Don't know. Guillermo said, okay. Yeah, when you're engaging and you're not distracted, exactly. But another two other things about boredom. So one was just, the next generation. I'm such a mean babysitter. The kids hate me because they'll come up to me and there's kind of an entitled attitude of, I'm bored, you need to fix it. I'm not going to take responsibility. And it's funny because I never give them the reaction that they want. They come up to me and they're like, I'm bored. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for you. Like, it's been a long time since I've had the privilege of being bored. It's, I miss being bored, which of course is not the response they want. Then they get a little bit angry sometimes. They're like, but I'm bored. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? And, but it's interesting because the things they come up with when they finally stop being angry, that I'm not going to take them out of it, are some of the most creative things I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's just so much fun to watch. And so then anyway, sorry, the other point is, do you take, if you are extremely busy, do you take time to schedule in boredom? Because a lot of times we think that, no, I've got other priorities. And the only way I'm going to ever be efficient, the only way I'm ever going to be effective, the only way I'm ever going to get anything done is if I focus on not being bored, if I focus on getting my list done. And I was just thinking about the discovery of penicillin, which I don't know how many of you know the details of that. But basically, what was his name? Alexander Fleming, I think, or something. Anyway, name doesn't matter. But basically, he was doing some research, and he'd left some petri dishes in his office, and I think they were left there for like a week or something on their own. They were just supposed to be sitting there growing. And he came in and he discovered his experiment had been contaminated by like mold spores or whatever it was. And they said 99 out of 100 scientists would have looked at that, been very frustrated, said, oh, I got to get on with my experiment. Okay, let's throw it out. Let's start over. Look at all this time I lost. But what he did is he just said, oh, I wonder what this contamination did. I'm just going to sit here, be bored for a second, not focus on what I have to do, and just take a moment to be curious. And he noticed that the cultures, the bacteria were dying. And he looked closer and he said, oh, I wonder what, this could possibly mean for the world. And anyway, it's a big, long thing from there of how it got finally discovered. But he discovered that this particular mold was killing bacteria, and that led to the discovery of penicillin, which, is a game changer. His experiment itself that he thought he was working on meant almost nothing. But the experiment that he ended up doing, because he took the time to step out of his obligations, to step out of what he thought was important, ended up being the most important thing that he did. So, our to-do list is important, but are you taking moments to step out of your to-do list and be curious about the world and be open to opportunities that might come up that aren't on your to-do list?
Great stuff as always. So happy to have you on here. Wow. Another person that knows about flow state, Mr. Duncan knows flow state quite well. And when you're an entrepreneur and you get into the flow, one of the benefits especially if you work, one of the upsides and the downsides being an entrepreneur is you can work whatever 18 hours a day you want.
Yep.
But if you get in the flow, people are like, "You're still in the shop? Things are going, I'm getting things done, I'm just," and you may go to bed at 4 in the morning, but you walk out the next day and you're like, "Yeah, I finished 3 days worth of work last night
Mhm.
because I got in the flow."
Absolutely.
And one of our YouTubers sent me a question: "Have you studied the link between boredom and obesity?" And I think the direct link is pacifying the boredom with food.
Mhm.
I'm bored, so I got to do something. My hands are fidgety. What can I do with them? Oh, food. And it's kind of like when people blame quitting smoking on gaining weight. Well, the nicotine wasn't keeping the weight off. It gave your hands something to do, and you built that habit that I've got to have this hand motion going on when I feel like I should be doing something. Well, if I'm not going to grab a cigarette and babysit that, then I'll grab something else and put it in my mouth, and it becomes food addiction. So lots of different things tied into boredom. And just like that, we are at the top of the hour. Bing! The whole hour went by, and we got in 2 subjects today. But it's time for us to change things up. For those of you that have been around Triple T for a while, you know that now it's time for open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call can ask a question, bring up a topic, and all the people on the call get to answer first. So who's got something to start us off with?
Mhm.
And that, saved by Mark. What do you got, Mark?
Well, I was saving this from last week, but I think it might, in a way, dovetail to some of our speculations. And I was considering the instinct or fight or flight, and there's actually a third category, freeze. And I think that our generation, I don't think growing up never learned freeze. Okay. We are, again, animals freeze when they're threats, if they, but I think that at least I did growing up in the 70s, if I was faced with a flight or flight situation, I would pause and then take action immediately.
Yep.
And, I can remember I was with a friend visiting a college campus, and we got out of the car, and we were just about to go into the dorm to go visiting, and we heard this girl screaming at the top of her lungs. Well, I looked at him and he looked at me, and it only took us a second, and we ran immediately towards the sound of the screaming. Now, the situation was this girl was drunk off her butt, and she had fallen out of the van that they used to go from the college down to the bars in town. So it turned out to be not quite as. We ended up going to the bars with them, but how we reacted, I think, is again, we didn't freeze for more than a second. We like I said, we paused and then we took action. You could have ignored it, could have gone the other direction, but we ran directly to the we took action immediately and went right to the sound of this girl a couple rows over that was screaming at the top of her lungs. So I don't know. I just thought that that was interesting, again, I don't think we learned freeze. I don't know if the kids today, or like I said, because of, boredom, they don't know what to do. And we became situationally aware because we had to take action, you know, and, um, you know, um, so it taught us to be, situationally aware and then take action, basically. We knew in the neighborhood which yards we could cut through. We knew which yards the grumpy neighbor would yell at us, or the sketchy guy would, you didn't go near his house. You know, we learned to, and I just, like I said, we didn't have, like I said, we grew up in a situation where we learned situationally how to behave immediately. I just wanted to get some input on the fact that I don't think we ever learned freeze. I think we learned fight or flight, take action, be situationally aware. And I'm not sure the kids today have that, that they take that, you know, that, they become immobile in certain situations, you know, um, and, again, the squirrel just whispered in my ear, school shootings, that, people freeze. It's like, no, we're getting out of here, My brain would be like, okay, where's the door? Where's the window? You know, um, if something's going, down and we have to leave, we're leaving, so we weren't going to be frozen, immobile, we would take action. So I just wanted to have people's input into whether or not, like I said, that, that's how I face situations. It's fight or flight, basically, with maybe a moment's consideration, which one, is the best, Anyway, but that was my thought. That was my query for the evening.
We had to learn how to take care of ourselves. We were taught to be capable. We were taught to discover our talents and our abilities and our capabilities. And it, got us to be strong in the world and brave too. Young people today, man, they got their phone, they got their credit card, they might have a car, they got their computer, but they're not out there in the real world. Not everybody, but they're not necessarily finding themselves and knowing what their strengths are and building their character so that they don't have to be afraid of life. They have what it takes to respond, not necessarily react to what's going on, but to respond. And for, people in our age group, it's instantaneously when something happens, like there is no hesitation at all. Like we may not know exactly what to do, but we know we're going to be doing something. We're gonna jump. We're gonna go towards the whatever, or run away from it, or get some help, or we're gonna. It's in our blood, automatic, right? So it's kind of sad. I see these young people, and they don't have, a lot of them just don't have any skills. They can't even count change back, for Christ's sake.
Yep.
So I agree with you, Mark.
Holly.
Yeah, I think this is a really fascinating topic. I will say there's technically 4 responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. A lot of times we don't talk about fawn very often, which for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it just means that you try to befriend the threat and become its fan so that it likes you. But my first thought when we were talking about this, the initial reaction is biological. You can't control it. There's a reason why animals have that first reaction. The question is, how long do you stay in that reaction? And the first word that came to my mind is responsibility. And I think maybe in older generations, the importance of taking personal responsibility and what Jocko calls, extreme responsibility, where I'm not just going to take responsibility for myself, but when the opportunity arises, I take responsibility for the group. I take responsibility for the vulnerable, whatever it may be. I think that's a value that's been lost a bit because it's a smaller thing. But so at work recently, we have some people, this is not my department, but they receive all the shipments and unpack them. And we had somebody who got a shipment that had some cockroaches in it. And so they screamed and ran away. But what I found was interesting. So in our job, the color of coat that you wear is the level of responsibility that you have. And what I thought was absolutely fascinating, green coat is, the highest, well, not the highest level, but it's one of the highest level. All the green coats, when this happened, stepped right up, walked right over, and just dealt with the situation. Where all the blue coats, the lower level people, ran away. And I just thought that was interesting how the color of coat that you're wearing can make all the difference in the world of, oh, this is my responsibility. I've got to deal with it. I've got to step up. I've got to step in. Versus, oh, this isn't my responsibility. I'm allowed to run away. I'm going to run away and I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm just going to sit here in my fear and I'm going to scream and I'm going to freak out. It wasn't, oh, who has the most fear? It wasn't who has, there's so many things I would have thought would have been the difference. But the number one difference was what color of coat were you wearing as to whether you ran towards the problem or ran away from it. And that just blows my mind. But yeah, the importance of taking responsibility, I think, is a dying value.
Yes, I completely agree. Greg.
And there's a distinction for me anyway of the word responsibility. Many of us have been taught that it's like a duty, right? But it isn't that. It's two words. It's the ability to respond, right? Respondability.
Yeah.
We know that. Like it's not something you have to do. You just have this ability to respond to something, and then you choose how you're going to do it. Not something you have to do necessarily. So anyway, I just thought to chime in with that distinction. Words, I really dissect words. I love words, and I've learned to dissect them and get to the true meaning of what they are. As opposed to how we've been taught, right? To think a word means a certain thing. So anyway.
I know that to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Especially of you, my friend.
Yeah.
Mark.
Well, building on what Holly said, again, this is how human beings mature. We take on responsibility for things, and again, if TJ or I take on or Greg take on a new responsibility, we don't get a hell of a lot more mature, but it is how we became mature by taking on the responsibility, for things. And when a young person takes on a responsibility, the end result is they become more mature, and that's how human beings mature, is by taking on responsibility for things. I tell the young folks, take on responsibility for stuff that isn't even your responsibility, because you get the benefit out of it of becoming more mature. Ladies, when they go through, having a baby, they have to take on the responsibility of that life growing inside of them, and they become very more mature as a result. And for 9 months, they take on the responsibility. My wife decaffeinated the whole household. She stopped smoking. She took on the responsibility, huge responsibility, of having a life growing inside of her with both of our children. And it led to, immediate and, change, basically, that she had that responsibility and she wasn't going to screw it up. She, and like I said, for 9 months, when we, when I became master of my Masonic Lodge for 9 months, I was the go-to guy. So I had to take on that responsibility. And the outcome was I became far more mature, completed my journey to adulthood by becoming, being responsible for all those things, and then, funny aside, after my daughter was born, she's in the recovery room, and, she'd been eating healthy for 9 months, hadn't smoked, hadn't had a drink, hadn't had any caffeine. And then in the recovery, honey, is there anything I can get you? He goes, yeah, get me a Big Mac, a cup of regular coffee, and a cigarette.
And a beer.
She was she was off duty after 9 months. But then when my son came along, she did exactly the same thing.
Right on. One of the things that crossed my mind, Mike had put some comments in the comment section, and some people, I think, are taught the freeze or the fawn at a very young age from their upbringing, either out of fear of retaliation or fear of being judged for an incorrect action or answer. You see a lot of the people that that if there was a lot of tension or even some potential verbal or mental abuse, when a situation arises where they have to be accountable for an outcome, and it can be something as very mild, and their taught reaction was like, I don't want to move either direction, because if I stay here, I'll get in less trouble than if I make a choice, especially if I make the wrong choice. Whereas a lot of us that grew up in the boredom days, we were making choices and finding out on our own what the circumstances were. Mike.
Hey, so yes, very much so. My father was, or he is, kind of a farm bully with some self-esteem issues, and would always kind of take away my foundation. Any confidence, it was always questioned, or why didn't you do it this way? Or there was always something that was wrong or picked apart. And he was a salesman. So an amazing salesman, I'll grant you that, but it is due to just bringing the power and wearing them down to the point where they don't have any other options. And so, and it's an exhausting position to be on the receiving end of that, because he is just there without any opportunity to fight back or anything like that. And if you do, then there are strong consequences. So when you're following the polyvagal theory, the parasympathetic system, when that first level of defense starts breaking down, then there's a physical break that comes in. It's the polyvagal break, and that releases, and then it drops into the sympathetic system. And if the sympathetic system is able to fight and interact and control the environment, then the vagal break resets and you're able to come back to peace. If that continues to go that breaks that down, then it's full control of the reptile brain. And especially when one of the hindrances here is when the sympathetic system breaks down and the vagal brake releases, then there's a physical reduction. Your heartbeat slows, your breathing slows, your right brain starts shutting down. It's survival, and the access to frontal cortex and visual cortex is removed because you're in survival mode. And when you grow up in a survival mode, then you don't have the ability to look over the fence because you're still set in a huddle position, trying to not only beat off his influence, but it is also the mind self-talk and the inertia that's created within that feels like a whirlpool. If you ever get caught in that, you fight and fight. And if you cannot swim your way out, then the closer that you get, the harder the pull. And of course, there's a tipping point where you're just drawn in. And that's what it's like, is that your whole world just shuts down to the point where it's like in a funnel and in a cocoon, and your brain goes offline, your body just, there's no air, there's no fuel. It's just stop. And that is how I lived the majority of my life. Even in school, I didn't have the skill set to be able to defend myself. So that is where a lot of that comes into play. So I am kind of a representative of all the individuals in your chairs and the other side of the fence of what it's like not to be regulated.
Well, I'm glad you're here, brother. And you now have the ability, with all the tools that you're learning and in your skill sets and stuff, to help a number of people that have gone through that. And I'm proud to have you as part of the team.
I'm glad to feel welcome.
Anybody else got any ahas, epiphanies before we try another one? Okay. Who's got the next question for the evening? I know there are people that have books full of questions. And the silence is deafening.
I can share something that happened on Friday, Friday evening, if nobody has anything else to talk about.
Yes, please.
I don't often get into a funk anymore. I used to. I actually had some experience with depression and maybe some suicidal thoughts years and years ago before I decided to get well or die. I chose the former. But on Friday afternoon, just like suddenly something came over me. Like, I don't know, I was just feeling a little bit lonely, and just I could feel that part of me, that old part of me that wanted to get into that funk because of the energy, right? Like an energy release, like something to do. So it was not foreign, but it was unusual because I hadn't done that in a while. Yet it was very familiar, and I wasn't sure what triggered it. I think I was just I wanted to do something. I wanted to go out and have some fun and have some company, to like interact with somebody. I think that's what triggered it. But I just watched it, and it was a good practice because I said to myself, I'm just like I separated myself from it. I was just watching myself and saying, I'm not that. I'm not lonely. I'm not angry. I'm not frustrated. I may be feeling a little bit lonely or a little bit alone or something like that. But I just looked at it and I said, I didn't own it. I didn't say I am that, I am this, or I am that. And it was really amazing that within a couple of hours, I guess it was, that it just dissipated because I didn't own it and I didn't add energy to it, right? Because what you think about, what you speak of, what you do amplifies it, good for good or bad, right? So it was a wonderful reminder of the powers that we have, right, to decide how we're going to be, regardless of what we're doing, right? It doesn't matter really. Everybody's doing something, but the trick is to be aware of how you're being while you're doing whatever it is you're doing. It could be working, it could be studying, it could be driving, it could be anything, having a conversation. But how you're being during all of that, very powerful to remind myself that we all have the power to decide how you're going to be in spite of all this stuff that's going on in our head, which most of it is hungover bad programming necessarily, right? So, I know you guys are all familiar with this. I just wanted to, let you know that it is doable to not go with something that you recognize as like negative, or it's not going to serve me for very long. So, a couple of hours later, and I was like, wow, I feel fine again. So, anyway.
Well, and that does bring up a good question for everybody of how many of us have felt the funk roll in like a fog and we're able to recognize it as such and take action
Mm-hmm.
instead of have it catch us by surprise or have somebody go, "What's wrong with you?" And you're like, "What?" And realize you were deep in the funk already before you had a chance to put up any type of defense system. Mark.
Well, you said it right away in your how you were describing it. You disassociated just enough when you link identity, which is a higher level, to a feeling or a label or a belief, it controls you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you reverse the flow and you said, I feel lonely. Okay. In other words, not making it your identity. I am lonely.
Right.
I am sad.
Yeah.
I am anxious. I am angry. Okay. Really? Are you the definition of that? Like I said, if we looked up anger or sadness or loneliness on Wikipedia, would your face be this is lonely,
Mm-hmm.
because you're linking a feeling to your identity and that controls you. Whereas if you say, I feel lonely, I feel angry, I feel sad, now you get to control it. And like I said, you said that as you were describing how you got out of that funk because you identified it as I feel this, I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
That empowers you to, again, dwell on it, try to figure out, what's causing that, but
Mm-hmm.
also to let it go. It's just a feeling, and feelings really aren't real. I mean, can you give me a pound of sadness? I'll give you back 2 pounds next week. Okay. It's just a feeling, and feelings aren't real. They feel real, like I said, but
Yeah.
you described exactly what you should do is just, again, disassociate just enough and to make sure the flow is in the right direction, that you feel something rather than that you are something.
It's that, the responsibility, the ability to respond, right? This is going on, and I have a powerful ability to respond to a situation inside of me or out there, whatever. And also now, all the time now, I'm not judging when something happens, like from our training, our societal conditioning. We're trained that if something scared you at some time, if something similar comes up, you run from it. You don't look at it, you don't face it, because you don't want to fear that pain again. But for me now, it's like there's no bad. It's all for me. I absolutely believe that everything that happens is beneficial to me. So I don't judge it. I just go, okay, I'm feeling this certain way, but I'm open to like seeing what's here for me, a lesson, a new way of doing something, a furthering to unload and get rid of things that don't serve me any longer. So that's also quite powerful, is not to run away from what's happening and to embrace everything. And most of the time, honestly, I go, oh, in the end, it's like, yeah, there was something there good for me. It could be very powerful, it could be very small, but that old ability to respond, it's just I like knowing I can do that.
Michael.
Hola, amigos. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Yay! I love you guys. You are so awesome. And I was listening, but I was also, doing my stuff. But I want to respond to your message. And you said, is there any time that you recognize when you feel the blahs coming on and things like that? But I also want to throw out sometimes, because a lot of us are more sensitive than others, and we're aware of our sensitivities, and the feelings that you may be feeling of depression or stress or negativity may not be your feelings. It may be feelings that you're picking up from one of your clients or that are being directed towards you. And what we do is we go within, we chill out. We're like, okay, am I feeling this, or is this coming from outside of me?
Yep.
And when you do that, you're like, okay, where's it coming from? Then you take what you can from it, deflect it into the sky, into the earth, and transmute it, as one would say. Take what you can from it and then release the rest.
Yep.
Because when people give you stress or anger or whatever, it's like if somebody's trying to give you a gift and you don't accept it, you don't have to accept it. So anyway.
It's absolutely true, and I think that we're all connected, right? The whole human body, maybe all living things everywhere in the multiverse. Are we not all made of the same stuff in different coagulated forms, right? So I'm really sensitive, like, which is another really good thing to know. It's like I might be feeling something that has nothing to do with me personally. I mean, especially right now on the planet. I mean, look at the the shift in consciousness and the turmoil it's created because people don't like change and all this angst and fear. It's like I'm feeling that. I'm sure you guys are too, to some extent, right? It's like, and I have these prayers that I say. One, my favorite, the Ho'oponopono prayer, right? I love you. Sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. Like I can dissipate that. I can say there's something going on somewhere. I don't even know exactly where, but I'm feeling this, I don't know, low vibration or negativity or something. And I'm saying, hey, God, something's going on somewhere. And like, I'm like, as an agent of God, I'm recognizing it, and maybe something needs to, some little help needs to be put in towards this area. So it's way bigger than just us personally.
Yeah. And that opens up a whole nother can of worms. So I love
absolutely. It sure does.
One of the things I wanted to add is if you're working with somebody who's going through this stuff, listen closely to how they describe the issue. I was working with a client last week, and they had that type of energy flow over them because of something that somebody had said. And they just rolled into a funk. And when they described it, I said, well, what's it like? What's going on? Well, I feel like I'm drowning. And so my response was, you feel like you're drowning? Okay, so if you were to get upright and stand up, how high might the water be on you? Now, I had made a couple of assumptions. One, that they could actually touch the ground, they could touch the floor of whatever they were drowning in. And I also made the assumption for them that it was water. But when they responded, they said, it's up to my neck. And I said, on your tippy toes or standing flat? On my tippy toes. Good. So what direction might you be able to go to get to a shallower point? And they looked around, and they headed a certain direction, and they said that the water was, it was getting shallower, and it didn't take long before they were simply up to their ankles, which they could deal with. And so I put we put in a little um, alarm system so that anytime they felt the water rising past their ankles, it would alert them to be able to figure out where the water's coming from and how to make sure that it didn't get up past their waist. So that's another little thing. Mark.
Okay, a lot here. First off, yeah, if you find like you're driving, well, just again, you change the frame. I would have changed the frame a little differently. Imagine you could touch bottom with your hands, and then all of a sudden you find yourself you're in a wading pool. Okay, not very. And how would you? If you felt like you were drowning in a wading pool, what would you do? Well, I'd stand up. Well, then stand up. Imagine yourself standing up. Again, different clinician, different technique. But I wanted to respond to what Renee had said, put in the chat about she has a client that's triggered by everything. I think again, my advice, one clinician to another would be to, like I said, is first of all, chunk down, to steal a line from Holly, give them a safe place, put them in a safe, place where they can feel all these triggers and come in just a little bit above them in terms of your mood state, create that rapport. I've been afraid, I've been triggered by all the same things that you are, and get them, like I said, is to chunk down a little bit, basically reach down, grab their hand and say, okay, I got you, you're safe here. You're safe to feel all these things and work things through. And as far as the technique that Squirrel came by and dropped off, was the autonomizer. Okay. The autonomizer is a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy. I could tell you a story. Guy came in one morning and he was blisteringly angry. He just had a big fight with his wife. And I said to him, on a scale of 1 to 10, how angry are you? He said, 14. I said, really? And then I asked the counterintuitive question that you use with the autonomizer and say, why isn't it higher?
Yes.
And he said, well, if I got any anger, I might have, hit her, or I might have yelled, thrown stuff or hit the kids or whatever. I said, okay, well, what might be some reasons why it wasn't any higher? And it's kind of like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. I don't want to be like that kind of guy around my kids, or I don't want to hit my wife, or, he started to put weight on that other side of the teeter-totter. And after generating a few reasons, I said, so go back inside. So how angry are you now? 12. Okay, so what might be some other reasons why it isn't higher? And over the course of 10 minutes, he generated so many reasons that all of his anger went away. He's like, that is so weird. I'm not angry anymore. I said, well, that's the power of your mind to, control your state. So, I've used the autonomizer when someone's feeling something intensely. I ask, on scale 1 to 10, how high is it? Oh, it's a 9. Oh, why isn't it higher? You got to remember to ask the counterintuitive question. Because if you ask, well, why are you so angry? Why are you so sad? Why are you so anxious? They're going to add weight to the other side, and the number is going to go increase. They're going to increase their anxiety or fear or anger or whatever. But you have to ask the counterintuitive question, why isn't it higher? Get them to put a number on it and then ask the counterintuitive question. That would be my suggestion, Renee. Others might have just, like I said, but you got to get in, like Holly says, you got to create that safe space for them so they feel, again, that comfortable, because you're reaching a hand down and you have to be pretty close to somebody in terms of your state to be able to reach down to give them a hand up. So I just borrow that from Holly. Okay, I'm done.
Guillermo.
I learned a technique from somebody from here. Okay. When those kind of thoughts that Greg was mentioned, I do in the morning. Like an example, this morning I had some kind of thoughts like that, and I put my hands on my chest and I start saying to myself, "Why you have those thoughts?" I talk softly to myself, and I start to begin to be awareness of why I have that. Then I embrace my emotions, saying that is not me, that's not my identity. And then I calm my mind with some box breathing exercise. And then if the thought continues, now I have tools to say to myself, just let it go. Let it go, let it pass. And when the thought wants to remain, now I can say no to the thought and says, I don't need you. It's not part of my identity.
Awesome.
Good for you.
Great answer, Guillermo. Appreciate you being here.
Mhm.
Any other ahas, inputs, epiphanies to add to this? Anybody? If not, is it time? Oh, Lenora.
I have a mix of a clustery of thoughts, especially when it comes to like Greg's Friday night experience. And I am definitely not immune to them. I definitely get into them. And I've started to, like, last couple of days have been a very good stretch. So I'm feeling a lot better. January was not my best month. I almost just spilled a ton of water. And when I get into those periods, I do my best to what I like to think of as coach myself, but it's really come to a deeper understanding of there is some part of me that has this stored energy. And the great thing about that is that energy is transformable and it's transmutable. And what's the other one that I like to write down? I think transformable and transmutable. But recognizing that I can have a conversation with that. So even for Greg, when he was like, "No, that's not me. That's not me. I don't feel like that anymore. Or that's not a part of me anymore." Whatever it is, what I love about that is because we're consciously having a conversation with our subconscious, and we are wavering in and out and up and down in these. What can kind of feel like a ping pong game from hell, or a lower frequency and a higher frequency. And
Mhm.
as you're talking to that conversation or that feeling or that energy, what you're doing is you're strategically and intentionally shifting it from the lower frequency up to a higher
Mhm.
frequency, ultimately to have a much more helpful vibration.
Yep.
And if you look at that as an art, we've been doing it our whole freaking life. It's just that nobody told us that we were doing it. And once you start to see it differently, but not just like, oh, I can consciously see it differently, viscerally see it differently, it becomes a very different game. And I think there's I like the idea of like there's our conscious thoughts and there's our subconscious thoughts. I do think that there's like multiple layers in the subconscious thoughts
Yeah.
because you can have the thought, but then there's another layer where like all this other stuff comes up.
Sure.
And there was a conversation of that I was having this morning. One of my favorite words that was not my favorite word, but now has become a favorite word, enough. Because especially if you are in a conversation with somebody and somebody's making you feel like you're not enough, you're literally saying the words out of your mouth on repeat. And so I was having that experience. And I came down and I sat with it. And as I was talking to that younger part, that energy, she was saying that nothing I ever do is enough. And then it came into, and she ultimately came down to like an even deeper one of, I'm trying to protect you. So that's why I'm like, there's so many layers in there. And if you can be the driver and the passenger, it's pretty impressive. You definitely have to stay wrapped in it. But what I really came to was like, I like to make people happy. Yeah. No matter what you do, you can contribute to somebody's happy, but you cannot make them happy. You can be a participant in their happiness, but if they're not in the vibration or in the frequency or in the mood to be happy, no matter what you freaking do, you could give them $1 million and then be like, it's not 2 million. It's not going to matter. And when you really start to understand that, Michael, I love seeing you smile. Child is over there. He's got this huge smile on his face. When you start to really understand that and go, oh, no matter what I do, and it's not like, oh, I understand it. The 40-something-year-old version of me understands it. Yeah, the younger part understands it, but there was like a shift in the entire DNA structure where it was like, oh, I was always enough. We're always all enough. We just have this perception because we were taught something. Where were you taught it? How were you taught it? And are you ready to shift out of that frequency? And that's why there's so many layers and it's a deeper unfolding. So I realized that I did spiral here. But that does lead me to I'm working on like potentially another book. I have no idea. But one of my favorite things to say is that you are your own meaning maker.
Yes.
You are also your own drug dealer. Stick with me. Your thoughts. I love how you all smile at me. Thank you for smiling at me.
Dopamine, baby, dopamine. Come on. I'm with you.
You do. You're dishing out your dopamine by the thoughts that you choose. And you are also dishing out your stress by the thoughts that you choose.
Absolutely.
And they're so beautifully practiced because we're so human. And I love the quote that somebody put in earlier, that we all have the same habit of being human. I thought that was beautiful. But really, when you can start recognizing, you're like, okay, I'm doing it to myself. I'm doing it to myself. I'm doing it to myself. And then you can quickly get into a conversation of cursing yourself out. You are really your own drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to keep feeling one way? Or do you really want to feel another way? How do you want to feel about the experience? So lots of insights, lots of Post-its, and lots of journaling. But,
I got a squirrel over here freaking.
oh, are they dying?
So real quick, before your squirrel, because I had my hand up, I just put it down real quick, but I want to tie into that.
Are we done?
My wife says I'm not as funny as I think I am, but I am always laughing. And you got to look for the joys. You got to look for the little things, and you got to laugh, and you got to have the dopamine. You got to do that. We are our drug dealers, and it is our job to open up our present. We either rip it open, or we put it aside because it's our present.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's our choice to react or respond to our stimuli, and we find what we look for. And like Mark was saying, hey man, just because you've been dealt a bad hand doesn't mean it's a bad hand. It's leading into what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it, man. So, and Lenora, you are amazing. You are the princess of TED Talk, and you are a heart of our conversation. So we appreciate you.
Yes.
And to tie right into all this fun stuff, positive energy is more powerful and negative energy is more plentiful. That's how they balance each other out. Positive energy is more powerful. negative energy is more plentiful. That's how they balance each other out.
And once you put a light on it, it doesn't necessarily have to be balanced at all. You just overwhelmed it with light. No shadow needed, baby.
Yes. Mark.
Yeah, that was definitely brilliant, Lenore. And my brain went right down that pathway, and I went, "Oh my God, how do you get people addicted? How do drug dealers? Oh, give them a little taste.
Oh yeah.
Get them addicted, you know? They'll be back for more."
Free sample.
But I was thinking about something else. Like I said, you know, Dr. David taught us to change your body, change your mind, basically. And when you adopt the body language, facial expression, posture, breathing rate of a particular emotion and hold it for 2 minutes, you go into that state. Okay. Now, because I came from a different school, when working with people with, behavior problems in the institution, I was always teaching them incompatible behaviors to like hitting themselves and stuff. Okay. So so I took what he had said and I kind of changed it a little bit because what we're really looking for, get ready to write this down, Lenore, is incompatible emotional states. Okay. Because you can't be happy and sad at the same time. They're incompatible. Okay. So, if you change your body, Greg, you change your mind. You basically create a state that's incompatible with sadness, that's incompatible with anger. Like I said, because they're incompatible states. They can't coexist in one mind at the same time.
Yep.
So when you create incompatible, like I said, when you change your body, and you hold it for 2 minutes, as Dr. David teaches, everything changes. Okay. So, and based on my training, that's what I teach people sometimes is, an incompatible emotional state to whatever it is they're feeling. So, and that's how I kind of understood his teachings.
And Amy Cuddy backed it up on her TED Talk with power poses.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of you that are listening don't know that one, I think Dr. David and myself are probably responsible for at least 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 views on that one. Any other ahas, comments, epiphanies on that? One of the comments that that Renee left on here also is questioning the question that I love asking people: is it yours or is it somebody else's? Is it like an emotional or energetic spider web that you walk through? And you'd be amazed at the amount of times people look at this emotion or this funk that's setting in, and when they really analyze it, they're like, I don't think it's even mine. Well, if it's not yours, how much longer do you want to hang on to it?
Yep.
Lenora.
I love that Renee pointed that out. And I also wanted to circle back to something else that she shared earlier. Were you complete, TJ? Because I can definitely pause.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't mine. And the word frequency and the word resonance has really been sticking in my brain quite a bit. And I have, I really like catchy phrases. Like there's a reason it's called Be Free. And they're like find your frequency, F and find, and F and frequency. So I write them down, I put them on jewelry, they're all over the place. And when it comes to your frequency, so if you want to write it down, find your frequency or fight for your frequency or figure out what your frequency is, whatever word you like, whatever catchphrase. In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and underneath the moon. Apparently I'm singing Skinamarink Dinky Dink over here. Choose. Thank you for whoever got my Skinamarink Dinky Dink joke. Fight for your frequency, because we will naturally pick up stuff from other people. It can't not happen. And dear God, if you live with other people, it can't not freaking happen. And there are times where I once told James, my friend James, he had passed away, and I said, I could feel it coming like 2-3 miles down the road. He goes, because your nervous system is syncing up. It knows where you're going before you even get there. So you're coordinating into going into this mode, into this identity. Pay attention to what frequency you want and recognize, set the intention. What's the frequency you want to be a part of today? Whether it's gratitude, whether it's noticing people's humor and noticing that people smile throughout the day. As you find your frequency, as you set your intention, notice the language in your body, the colors, the shapes, the sizes, the textures, and multiply it throughout the day, as in care more about your frequency more than anything else. And it sounds obnoxious because you're like, I can't stop in the middle of the day. And I'm telling you, I have a puppy, and there's nothing that's been more consuming in my brain than having a puppy. And I have to stop and say, okay, you know what? Puppy's in crate. I need to go either hide in the bathroom or sit down for a second and figure out where the hell my brain is right now. Because again, we're dishing out the drugs and our thoughts come so freaking fast. Find whatever frequency it is that you want and figure that out multiple times a day. Check in with yourself. Where are you? If you're holding on to somebody else's stuff, cool, no problem. Let it go and recalibrate to find your frequency that you want, that you can be a part of, whether it's gratitude, whether it's seeing humor, whether it's feeling calm. Or my most recent favorite is feeling settled in the uncertainty, which also closes the loop to TJ's at the beginning of being okay. It's okay. You've survived other things before. You're going to survive them again. You'll figure it out along the way. It's okay. That's what I wanted to share about Renee's. And I'll come back to that another time. Okay.
Isn't it a lot like what you say? It's a lot like when you have an FM stereo in front of you and you want to dial in. Are we not dialing in frequencies, right?
Yes.
Like you dial in, oh, that I don't like, hip hop rap, it's negative, right? Or you put on some classical, some jazz, or some pop, or some dance, or something, right? And that's what we have control of in our heads. We can dial in unlimited frequencies, and we can just, no, I don't like that. And I'm not going to beat myself up about it. It's just like, it's not what I'm not feeling it. Oh, here's an old Michael Jackson song, Beat It or something. Yeah, man. Whatever moves you. You can decide the frequency that moves you, right? Up or down or whatever. So just all more of our power that we are rediscovering, powers that we're rediscovering, right?
The other thing that I wanted to add in was, because I can get so in my head. I'm sorry. TJ.
No, it's great. It's great.
So tuning into your frequency. And you'll see certain people and you'll think, oh, they have such a good life. They have such a good life. I can't deserve that, or I can't experience that. And it's, yes, you can. You absolutely can, which goes into deeper resonance. But if that's somebody's reality, who's to say that that can't be your reality too?
Yeah.
And which goes back to closing the loop on Renee's. There are certain people who will fight unintentionally for their limitations. And that's okay.
Sure.
Recognizing that you don't have to take that on, or that you've offered as much as you could. There comes the end of your bubble and the beginning of their bubble. And whether they accept it in, whether they integrate it, whether they leave it down there, we only can do so much. And I used to think, like, I can help everybody. And it's not that I can't. Am I the one that speaks to that person? Do they want that? Do they want those insights? I know I'm closing in on time. I'll be done for now. I love you all to pieces. Just
Good stuff.
Well, one of the things that crossed my mind while you were bringing that up, one thing that Mark and Greg and I have in common, we've all been DJs.
Mm-hmm.
And
Still am.
we can make the crowd do a lot of things by picking out certain songs.
Sure.
Make them feel certain things, well, when you understand how powerful music is,
Mm-hmm.
it's another resource to help bring you out of the funk. And sometimes I've been in funk and I just wanted to feel it. I'm just like, you know what? I'm having a day. And I'll put on some Five Finger Death Punch, or I'll put on something where I can just like,
Oh yeah, it's all energy, right?
there, got that taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have those days where I'm like, I'm in a pretty good mood, and I don't want to listen to something that's going to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And with a client like Renee is alluding to, I've had those clients where they don't want the change because they love the music so much that even if you do get them to dance to a happy song, they'll, as soon as they get a chance, they'll put the sad song back on. Whether it's for secondary gain, whether it's out of commonality or something, they just know it so well. But here we are, second hour flew right by.
Wow.
Just like that, 2 hours. How many times have I brought up, if you don't believe in time distortion, come here, and if you think that time goes too fast, do a plank or do something like that, because it does happen. But either way, I want to thank every one of you again. I hope you get really tired of hearing me thanking you for offering up your precious commodity of time here on this platform, because it's not for me. I just want to get this information out, help us to help other people. Please share these with as many people as you can think of. That's why I put them out there for free. There's no cost to view them or subscribe or all the above. We're just out here, a tribe willing to help others and build ourselves up as well.
Amen.
So, love you guys, and I also get to say, love you, Mom. So take care. Hope to see your beautiful smiling faces back here in 7 glorious days. And until then, live life to the fullest. Have fun, enjoy, laugh, live, love, and all those good things. And I will see you soon.
All right. Good stuff.
Love you all.
Thank you, everyone. Love you all. Have a great one.
Cheers.
Go Pats.